Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, July 23rd, 2020 South Bay Council of Governments Board of Directors meeting. And so we have verified the quorum. Can we confirm the posting of the agenda?
Yes, yes.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
We will be adding legislation, which was in a supplemental mailing that was sent to you earlier today. And one of the pieces I sent to you, we just found out is not, we're going to be taking off the agenda, but when we get there, I'll explain it all.
That's
Okay,
fine. Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any comments from the public?
Okay.
No comments? From the public?
Excuse me. We have not received any, and no one has said they would talk now.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved. Horvath.
Second, Boyles.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the consent calendar be approved. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any in opposition? The consent calendar is approved. So let's move forward with the presentations. First, we have Mr. Mark Wilbur, President and CEO of Everything HR and Employers Group and BizFed. Mr. Wilbur joined Employers Group in March 2007 as the youngest president and CEO in the association's 124-year history. It is the industry leader in human resources professional services. Mark sits on the board of directors for NAM, the National Association of Manufacturers, and is the former chair of the Los Angeles County Business Federation, the largest alliance of business networks in California, representing more than 350,000 businesses and more than 3.5 million employees across the region. Prior to EG, Mark was a consulting partner at Anderson, as well as served as Associate Dean of the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California, USC. Mark earned his BA and MBA from the University of Southern California. Mr. Wilbur, welcome. Please
Thank
join.
you very much. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to everybody today. And I owe all of you a debt of gratitude because I was supposed to be on back in May, I believe it was, or June. And, you know, my dad had just passed away. So I really appreciate the board and everybody giving me an opportunity to come back and cover this important stuff while my family was dealing with a very difficult time. So a big thank you to everybody that was part of that decision to allow me to come back. So thank you. So we did this survey back in May. So you'd think, oh gosh, you know, this thing's going to be out of date. It's going to be old. It's going to be all that. So we've been doing surveys for 60 years at Employers Group for a very long time. We actually sell data to organizations like Willis and Mercer and other organizations. So we're in the hunt of, you know, some of the biggest consulting firms in the country as far as doing survey work. And we did what was called a variant analysis in July. So for the stat nerds in the room, you know, this is where you go out and you basically had asked permission to be able to recontact people and see if their answers had changed or modified in any way, shape, or form. And it's kind of painstaking. It takes a lot of time, but hey, with COVID and everybody working from home, we got some time. So we went after it and updated our results, and I found it very, very interesting. At the end of this slide, there's also, I've given both links. I did an interview with Frank Motek back in May after we had launched this whole thing. And then I also did one with him on July 14th, just a week ago, with an update discussing some of these results and some of the issues. So much stuff has happened since the time we did this to today. If you remember, we had people acting out at the end of May, basically people going to the beach to hell or high water and all that. And then they started to reopen everything. And then that got shut down. And then we re-shut down everything, at least in, you know, most of California and most of the areas. So we've ridden a bumpy ride to get to where we are today on July 23rd. So next slide. So you'll all have access to this, you know, information. as far as the study group, it didn't really change. So the number of industries participating, the number of people we contacted, all of those things really did not move. And I think, if I remember right, I think you guys had access to the prior results. So I'm going to focus tonight, most of my comments in this window of time, to those things that have changed. So none of the respondent numbers have changed. I mean, we still, the vast majority were small, medium-sized businesses. We covered virtually every industry on the planet, because that's kind of Los Angeles, right? I mean, we pretty much have everything here. I guess we don't have, foresting in downtown Los Angeles, but we have pretty much everything else. So next slide, please. So this is where the key is to start discussing, and you'll see some of the parentheses. These are where some of the results started to change. So on the positive side, right out of the gate here, our businesses are ready to reopen, confidence high and all of that. And we actually saw further growth in those areas. So most businesses feel prepared to open. And a lot of them gave commentary, because all of this was done by phone and hand tabulated by one, and calling these people. So they're pretty accurate, to say the least. So 89% of the business feel ready to go. This is an interesting one. So most of them feel self-confident about self-monitoring. And this is an important stat that we'll get to later, especially when people always ask me, well, okay, this is all great, Mark, but what do you think, what do you think Gavin should do? What do you think, Garcetti should do? These kinds of things. So we'll come back to this one a little bit later. And then the other one that really jumped a lot, employees are willing to return to work. Back in May, there was real concern and such high anxiety with employees, were they going to be able to come back? Did they even want to come back? So 68% of business owners now believe their employees are eager to return to work and their work locations. Part of that may be related to the fact that the $600 bonus is coming to an end here in a few days as well. So, that may be playing into this, but when you're an owner, you don't know if that's necessarily true. But most of the participants, when they'd gone through this, they went, and I was actually surprised and honestly a little impressed. They spent some time digging in to kind of clarify their own answers that they had provided. So I was very surprised at how articulate many of the CEOs and business leaders were when we were calling to follow up. So while there's optimism that they're ready to open, that there's optimism that they can self-monitor and that the employees are ready to come back, there is severe frustration here with this second shutdown. A lot of frustration. And then on top of that, which now everybody's scrambling to try and understand what it means, is these, this closure of the schools and having to do distant learning. I mean, a lot of people making these decisions, they don't really have an idea about what that does from an impact standpoint, and how many employees aren't going to be able to go back to work because they've got, 3 kids in elementary school that they can't suddenly just go back to work and leave, a bunch of 7, 8, 9-year-olds, at home. So, not without going to jail anyway. So anyway, let me get through a few of these other ones. So a lot of them increased their frustration, do not feel the officials are listening to business concerns, because they wouldn't be making some of these decisions, or they'd at least find some sort of compromise in the middle. Most of them had a lot of commentary in this area, in that they kind of felt like it's all or nothing kind of decisions. And that is super frustrating to businesses, because those all or nothing decisions can completely wipe out businesses' ability to reopen. For some businesses, I mean, honestly, us, Employers Group and Everything HR, I mean, we are slammed right now because we're so busy helping all of our members and clients with HR issues. We're absolutely burning the midnight oil right now, but I think we're more the exception than the rule, that's for sure. So the other thing that really was concerning, so there was a question about this paid sick leave, family leave, unemployment benefits, workers' comp, and that it was going to further complicate an outlook for them to reopen. And most of them really, you got to keep in mind, the school closure absolute decision hadn't been made when we were doing these phone calls. That literally just happened, as all of you know, just last week. But a lot of the discussion was in play. So most of them would caveat their answer with, you know, but if they close those schools, I'm going to lose half of my manufacturing floor, because a lot of them have small kids. And there might be, and I was, you know, a lot of the manufacturing companies, there could be a husband and wife both working there, because maybe that's where they met. Somebody's going to have to stay home, take care of these kids. And the daycare solution is MIA right now. There's some daycares are open, but they're taking less kids. There's all these constraints around it. So that's got a whole different issue to it. The last item on this page relates to AB 5. Nearly all businesses, 70% of them plus, felt that the state needs to look at alternatives to help people to be 1099s. I think that's going to significantly increase now with this school closure issue going on. Next slide. So the scary side of things, you know, there was literally no change to the top item. You know, nearly 90% of businesses state that the stay-at-home order severely impacted their revenue. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. You know, 46% of those businesses losing 50% or more of their projected revenue for the year. You know, those are huge numbers, really impactful, very difficult to deal with. And now that's going to be compounded. None of the responses varied from their initial responses to that. So the other one was a little disconcerting though. The next one down is where it says over 50%. 57% of businesses have had to lay off or furlough employees. So the number increased on the number of people that had to be laid off or furloughed. And then while that number goes down, this is a bad answer. So prior is 52% of those can affirmatively state that they plan to bring those employees back. Well, at this point, only 47% affirmed that they could bring those employees back. And all of them caveated this whole issue around schooling. I got to tell you, nothing jumped out at me as much. I mean, the second shutdown was severe, but it was very clear that this shutting down the schools and having no middle ground to figure out what parents are supposed to do that are two working incomes. I mean, we're in Los Angeles. It's an expensive city. Most families have two earners. And so how to sort that out is going to further compound this thing. So that's a big deal. And then the last one on here is one that I brought up initially when we were starting to do this survey. And that is, I'm sure all of you have at one point now, especially at this point, have ordered takeout, curbside pickup, or delivery of food, whether you use Postmates or DoorDash or whatever you're doing, but you've started to buy and your consumer behaviors have started to change. So a lot of people had never had the DoorDashes or Postmates. They'd never done that before. And a lot of them hadn't done the curbside, or they hadn't done a lot of these things. And a lot of their behaviors have started to change. And so the problem is it's two pieces to that is not really measurable to date until we are truly reopened. One is how much is permanent consumer behavior changed from a buyer behavior standard. So if I ate out 5 days a week out of 7, and now I'm only eating out 2 days a week, you know, if you compound that over, you know, 8, 9, 10 million people, that's a huge number to hit that industry in just the restaurant industry alone. And there's a lot of factors going on here, from health clubs. People have, you know, been ordering Pelotons and things like that, and they're working out at home and finding other means. So if you just dropped $2,000 on a Peloton, does that mean you're going to drop your membership at Bay Club or 24-Hour Fitness or wherever you're at? So these are some of the issues that are, I think are like a black hole and a real concern. And with the second shutdown, you're going to have a really hard time to reassure and build up the second piece, and that's the consumer confidence. So if I'm a consumer and I'm going to go into a restaurant, I think I want to see like a certification, or I want to see something that they are doing all the right things to make sure that my family is going to be safe. So whether that's like our restaurant, you know, symbols that we have, and things like that from a wipe down standpoint. Maybe that's there. This is kind of me spitballing right now as far as a solution goes, but you're going to have to do something to reassure and build up consumer confidence, because you can see that people are staying away. I mean, they're going out. People, look, I want to go out. I want to get out there, but you got to admit, you kind of feel good when you're outside and you're at a place and you're distanced from everybody. How much of that psyche is going to extend, and how long is it going to impact the economy? That's the real question that we got to get our arms around. And nobody is really looking at that at all. So that's a big item. And then last but not least on this, and that is the government guidance and workforce investment. So there was really no change to the results from a reopening guidelines. It kind of felt like the COVID-19.ca.gov site, provided a lot of information and a lot of updated information and so forth. The problem was that the feedback we were getting, that there's a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of hypocrisy, and really felt that small businesses were being not only ignored, but unfairly harmed in this process. I'll give you an example. And I thought this was a good example, and it was told to me, and I get it. So over here at Manhattan Beach Mall, Macy's was allowed to be open, and Tommy Bahama's was allowed to be open because they have outdoor doors that face the street. Yet they're both inside. But if you had a door that opened on the inside of the mall, you were not allowed to reopen. So a lot of those small businesses, if you walk down through Manhattan Beach Mall, there's probably a fourth of those businesses just in the first wave that were boarded up, gone now. And that's only going to worsen. So they kind of felt like, again, all this all or nothing answers were unfairly harming small businesses, and didn't really get at an opportunity for businesses to respond and give them an opportunity, following the rules of social distancing, wearing masks, doing all the wipe down, the cleanup rules, all those things, allow a business to have an opportunity to open and doing all the right things. This one surprised me. 60% of kind of felt that there should be some kind of required safety training certification for either individuals or for businesses related to, kind of similar to harassment prevention requirement. So the harassment prevention rules, you have that 2.5-hour course, you can take it online and things like that. A lot of people felt that, yeah, there were some people that really get it and are doing all the right things, but there's a lot of people who have either not been watching TV or not been connected or not in a position that they've had an opportunity to do these things, don't really know. And they don't want these people randomly coming back to work and not doing preventative things to make sure everybody's safe as much as they can. So that was there was a lot of feedback. And then last but not least, investing in our new workforce. This is an interesting one. Again, it comes back to what I was talking about earlier. So 55% of businesses feel, despite budget issues, the state should increase the amount of funding for training programs for all these displaced workers that have gone on. Kind of reminds me of the 2008 when we had that huge crash, and there was a lot of investment to try and get people retrained, the ETP programs and some of those other things that are out there. But the one that really jumped is one of the biggest jumps of all, because originally everybody was thinking when we gave the original survey that June was going to be it. We were going to be reopened, right? I mean, end of May, June, we're good, we're running. So 34% at that time stated that employees had cited childcare challenges. That jumped to 46% with extensive comments and concern regarding this whole distance learning thing, the mental health impacts, the worker availability, the kids at home. And this is before they actually made the decision. So, because a lot of people caveated like, well, I don't want to change my answer, but boy, if they make my kid have to learn from home, both my wife and I work, I don't know what we're going to do. So I think that number now that that's becoming more solidified every day, I think that number probably is lowballed, if anything, on the 46%. So the last two slides are basically the same information, just reconfigured in different ways. So if you can go to the next slide, I'm not going to spend any time here, but when you go back and pull this off your website, we just reconfigured it. So depending on your audience or how you want to communicate it out or discuss it, We just kind of reframed it. So the impact on the business community, the regulatory disconnect, and then next page. And then lastly, these reopening issues. So it's basically taking the information I just walked you through and kind of reframing it in a different way, because sometimes people take information in differently than others. So, and then last but not least, you'll have those 2 links that you'll be able to go to and listen to. So there it is. Hopefully I didn't run over. Hopefully I'm still okay time-wise, and I can happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. That was extremely interesting and informative. Are there questions for Mark? Please raise your hand. Use the raise hand button and raise your hand. I see one from Drew Boyles.
Thanks, Olivia. Hey, Mark, I was just wondering, thanks for providing kind of the more regional impact in terms of total number of lost jobs, et cetera. Has BizFed or anyone else extrapolated that to lost revenue for cities in terms of sales tax, TOT, business license tax? Have there been any preliminary estimates?
Not on a citywide. Part of the challenge we had on the survey is we were trying to get a fast response. And one of the things we've learned a long time ago, business leaders are very reluctant to jump on and do these things. So we made it anonymous unless they wanted to, at the very end of the survey, provide us their email to follow back up with them. So we were able to pull together some information based on district data. So, for the supervisors, but down on the city level, we just didn't have the data to get down to the city level. I wish we did, because that'd be cool.
Christian Horvath, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Can you be a little bit more specific about how many, typically when you're dealing with BizFed, it's usually a lot of the big corporations and big entities here, at least in the basin. I don't know about up in the Central Valley, but who was participating in this, and what type of a response did you get? Are we looking at thousands of responses, across the basin, or, how many of them were small business versus medium size or big corporations? Just to gain an understanding of, where that data is really coming from.
Absolutely. If we could just pull my presentation back up and go to page 2, if that's possible. If it's not, I apologize, and I can just talk through it. Awesome. So go to page 2. Boom, right there. Okay, so interesting you say that. What's really funny is you're totally right. The impression that BizFed gives, and it's because of the investors that are involved. So you got the Northrops, the AT&Ts, these huge entities that contribute money in to help us go battle in DC and Sacramento and so on. But the truth is the vast majority of the participants are actually very small businesses and medium-sized businesses. And that's consistent every time we do a survey. So, because the big ones really don't make up that much of BizFed, but they have this presence there because they're always the investor side of it. So, they're the sponsor, they're sponsoring this thing and they're underwriting this. So they do those things, and it kind of gives the wrong impression. I totally agree with you. So you can see here, 51%, 361 responses came from small business owners with 0 to 10 employees. So we're talking, half of them were really small businesses. You're talking like, the flower shops, the restaurants, small restaurants, things like that, where, there isn't a ton of employees. 17%, came from 11 to 100 employees. And then you can see the other ones as well. So we did have a chunk this always drives me crazy whenever you do a survey. You have the thing there and then people will skip a question, either because they don't know or they just didn't bother to look at it. So unfortunately, we had a chunk of them that didn't disclose the number of employees. I don't know why, because it's an anonymous survey. I don't know what the big deal would be, but anyway. But you can see the vast majority, though, are small to medium-sized businesses. We did have enough for, a statistically valid survey number for the larger companies for over 100. That's what we wanted to make sure, is that we had statistically valid data for kind of 3 categories, which BizFed likes to be in: 0 to 10, 11 to 100, and then over 100. And so we were able to hit those marks, but got close on the big ones. I mean, I think, and we weren't probably close at all if those 19% had answered. Does that help your question?
Yeah, no, and I apologize that I missed the second slide before. So
Oh, no, it's, I kind of blew over it because I was trying to get to that other stuff. It's not your fault.
Thank you. George Chin has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I don't know who was on the LA County Public Health telehealth just 2 hours ago. I will ask you, Mark. And the premise is this. Given the premise that it's really prevention of death is what, at the end of the day, we're trying to prevent. Assuming that I look at Torrance data and I'm going to enlarge it to all the cities in the South Bay COG, if each of us here have been monitoring our death, right, and we're confident it's still in pretty good control.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have a way to have a dialogue with whoever's providing the logic or data so that Governor Newsom, I asked the county, and the county said they can't do anything. Here's my premise. Going forward, when we went to stage 3 of opening was good. Now we're pulling back. I believe the logic should not be when you pull back, it's all for nothing for all 88 cities in the county.
Agree.
It's like, and my logic was, you penalize a football player on the field for the penalty, and then you take care of it. Or the team if it's a brawl, but you don't penalize the entire Pac-12.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a logic we can try to get. The county said they can't do anything because the state won't allow the county, as they do the pullback, to be cherry picking based on data.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because and thank you for that question, because it gets right in the heart of the solution matters related to this. So when you're taking a look at these small to medium-sized businesses, when you're talking to those owners or those managers that are running these places, they are fully confident that they could have that place clean, have it accessible, have it outdoors. Even if they had to move the retail piece outdoors, they don't even care. They just want the opportunity to operate. So how we're trying to deal with Gavin and all of that is that there are 3 committees and they're called business committees, and they have they kind of have different categories. So one is like, healthcare, human services, all of that. Then another one's more industrial, and another one's like services related. And in any case, those are advising, and every one of those has multiple members of BizFed in it. I'm sure there's probably maybe people even from this board that are involved in it. Like Fran Inman, I don't know if anybody knows Fran, of course, Tracy Hernandez and several others. So we're trying to get them to find this compromise, because I agree with you 1,000%. This all or nothing is going to destroy this economy and put us into a pickle that it's going to take a decade to dig out of where they're going. And the ramifications are severe. So, not only economically, but just the mental health issues going on. I mean, the suicides in California over the last 3 years have skyrocketed. I mean, it is just, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that I really wish the people would cover it, because I think it would give people a better sounding board and understanding of what exactly we're dealing here with from a human crisis standpoint, because sometimes the cure can be worse than the plague. So I just, we've got to get our heads around this and advise, and we are working hard at it. I mean, I have not been on more calls than I have in the last 2.5 months. I mean, there was a time I almost wished I hadn't done the survey, because I just feel like all I've been doing is talking about the survey and the data from it. But it's it's good stuff, and it's crystal clear. They're ready to reopen. People want to be open, and better yet, they want the opportunity to do it right. Nobody wants to open and put people in danger. That's ridiculous. People want to open and do it right. If people aren't wearing masks when they're coming in, they're not getting service. These kinds of things. They get it, and they're happy to do that. But don't shut me down and not give me an opportunity to be able to employ people and to be able to move forward. That's where the real fight is. And this all or nothing thing is really, it's going to put us in a real pickle. And I'm very concerned about I'm really concerned about this state that I was born in. My family goes back to the middle 1800s here. I mean, I have a lot of family history here, and this is one of the worst situations I've ever seen. I mean, when did California not allow the golden dream to have an opportunity in front of people? I don't get it. I mean, shutting us down, that's just not California style. Figuring out a creative solution, that's California style. California style is leading the country and figuring it out and putting it out there and saying, you know what? We actually figured this thing out. We can reopen, and this is what we got to do. Not just shut it down and put our head in the sand. That's just not California. That's why so many people are so frustrated. My opinion.
John Cruikshank has a question. John?
We can't hear you, John.
The infamous mute button. It's always the mute button.
We're not working.
Okay, then I guess we'll move on to the next speaker. Mark, thank you so much. This has been very informative, and I think everyone got a great deal out of it. And you will make your presentation available to us?
Absolutely. It's already been given. You guys have it. And if anybody ever wants to do a separate follow-up with me, or call me or anything, feel free. I love helping people, so feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to jump in.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Our next speaker is Jackson Kalb. Jackson Kalb began cooking professionally at the age of 13 at Malise Restaurant. After 6 years of cooking, Jackson attended Cornell University's School of Hotel Administration. Jackson also worked at Joel Robuchon, Alinea, and Union Square Cafe before graduating. After college, Jackson worked for Hillstone Restaurant Group, then ran Factory Kitchen as chef de cuisine. He is currently the chef owner of Jaime Enoteca in El Segundo and Ospi in Venice, which is opening next month. Welcome, Mr. Kalb, and I need to note that you do not represent the Restaurant Association. You were invited by Mayor Drew Boyles. Welcome, Mr. Kalb.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't have a formal presentation to offer, just my words, and I can speak on behalf of most of the peers in my industry with what's going on. I'm not sure if most people know how restaurants operate. Typically, in a well-operated restaurant that has a lot of volume, there's a lot of revenue, but very little profit. So net can range anywhere from best case 30% to 5 to 0%, which is actually very common. Typical would be 10%. So we're already operating on what's considered razor thin margins, in my opinion. And for lack of a better term, we're completely screwed right now. The stats that I have seen show that without any stimulus for restaurants specifically, we're looking at 83% closure rate for independent restaurants. So that's excluding the chains, the big guys, which is massive. Obviously, that doesn't need to be said, but even with the stimulus, it could be as high as 53%. That was extrapolated from Yelp's data, which is interesting. They have a ton of information. So yeah, we're completely screwed. I think from what I've seen in the South Bay in general, they seem to be doing okay, maybe because there's not quite as much volume as a place like downtown Los Angeles. That being said, I don't believe that we can fix the economy without fixing the biology. So looking at independent operators, a lot of these people have one restaurant and that's it. And this can be the money that they used from their entire life savings to open up one tiny space, which is actually the exact position that I'm in. I'm relatively young, but that's how I did my first restaurant. And I think that if you decide that you're ready to open just from wanting to alone and nothing else, not necessarily being ready, you might say that you're ready to be open, that you're ready to wear all the PPE, that you're ready to follow all of the guidelines, but you might be just doing it for survival mode. I don't know if I'm explaining that clearly. Another way I could say that is we're kind of just saying, yes, we're ready to open as business owners because we're so desperate, and not because we're actually ready to do so. Based again on this is just what I'm hearing from my peers. Yes, there are in all industries, I'm sure, but specifically with the restaurant industry, there are plenty of operators that are willing to do things 100% to the T, but there are also plenty of them who are willing to say they're going to do everything to the T and cut plenty of quarters. On top of us already hemorrhaging countless dollars of, pressure from landlords, from city and state taxes that were due in March that are coming up due again, from unemployment taxes, unemployment from countless expenses, to put the PPE expenses on top of that, to put all of these new protocols in place is just another expense. So to say, for example, you can open up at 50% capacity doesn't mean you'll be 50% full and your costs are going to increase on top of that. To say that you can open up at 50% capacity as long as you're outdoors and you're 6 feet apart, same thing. People are still afraid to eat. So I don't really have a solution, unfortunately. I just have information. And the thing that might help restaurants specifically the most right now is something called the Restaurants Act, which is being pushed specifically by the Independent Restaurant Coalition. And I don't know exactly when this might come into play, but it's $120 billion of stimulus. I believe the stats are 11 million people are in the restaurant industry right now. And the restaurant industry itself got $0 in specific funding. Airlines have 750,000 employees and they got 25 billion. Sorry, don't quote me on those numbers, but that's just to give you an example of what's going on. And it's kind of interesting that for the first time, really, from what I understand, really ever, that restaurants are actually getting attention in the first place, because people didn't really realize how many people worked in restaurants because it's so fragmented. It's all spread through independent restaurants. So if there's any way that we can get the council members of the South Bay to help push this Restaurants Act, I think completely selfishly, I think that would help us a lot. I don't feel right being selfish, but now is kind of a do or die moment for, even more so than myself, just most of the people that I work with. I'm sorry I don't have more information to give you guys, but that's really where we're at right now, specifically with the restaurant industry.
So I have a question before I take other questions.
Sure.
The Restaurants Act, is this federal legislation that's pending?
It is, yes.
And do you know where it is in the system now? How far along it's gotten?
I don't know. I'm not sure I can answer that. I could connect you with someone or everyone with someone who would be able to give you more information, but I can't personally know.
I would appreciate it if you would do that. Let us know
Sure.
who is sponsoring it so we can get behind them. I'm certain there are many of us who would like to help.
You can send everything to me.
All right.
Okay. To Jackie?
Mhm.
Sure.
Well, you have certainly given us a real inside look at what you're facing and what I'm sure all of our restaurants are facing. And I wonder if there are questions. Yes, I have a question from Drew Boyles.
Third cup of coffee today. My apologies in advance. Jackson, first of all, best Italian restaurant in the South Bay. If you haven't been to Jamin Ateca, I'm not kidding. It's incredible. This guy is a trained chef, the best. And it's in the most unassuming strip mall in El Segundo on Main Street. But it's incredible. I think the thing that hit home for me most was that example, that comparison that you drew between the airlines and the restaurants. I mean, that's just astounding to me, the disparity there. I'll certainly do anything I can to help in El Segundo and talk to my colleagues. You're definitely not being selfish. It's just lobbying, which everyone does.
Sure.
And what can you just take like a minute or so and talk about, because I don't know if my colleagues fully understand. I mean, I've been really close to restaurants. I'm an entrepreneur. I had to retool my business like 3 times since COVID. 150 employees down to 50, back up to 100, down to 75, back up to 150, now down again. Now I can't get people back to my business because the incentives are so strong. Can you talk about with the group, just really quickly, your experience in having to retool and, you know, reinvent your business several times over? I remember when you were selling like wine and food. You were a grocery
Sure.
store for a while. So maybe just like kind of just paint the picture of what it's been like as a
Sure. Yeah, I guess is actually something I completely forgot to mention too. And I believe Mark mentioned it briefly, or someone maybe at the beginning of this. We've had to shift completely to delivery, and we're not doing that ourselves for many reasons. One of them being insurance. But when we shifted to delivery, mostly we had to use DoorDash, Postmates, Uber Eats, Grubhub. And remember how thin our margins are already. They take roughly 15 to 35% of every single dollar we make through them. So if you pull out your phone, go to our restaurant, you order anything from us, for us, it's personally, I can share those numbers with you, between 23 and 30%, depending on the delivery service you use. So that alone, just, it's almost like fool's gold, right? You see the numbers coming in, and then at the end of the week or the end of the month, it kind of all gets taken away from us. We've had to shift, obviously, completely to delivery or shutting down. Many of my peers chose to shut down. I personally chose to at least try and fight. The second that Governor Newsom said we had to shut down, so I said, let's at least try the takeout. I worked every single day that we were shut down, except for one. We had to try to bring people in because, as Mayor Boyle said, we're in a very unassuming strip mall. So I can't even believe we did this, but we printed 40% off beer and wine on sheets of paper as big as we could and taped them to our window. When we take away the 40%, we're making $5 to $15 on a bottle of wine, and that's for the high-end stuff. We had a bottle of wine for $280 on our menu after the 40% off. So we were making $3.50 off that bottle. And people who knew about that wine ordered it. So we actually sold all 6 bottles of our inventory, and we hadn't sold even one in 2 years. So things changed drastically just for our little tiny restaurant. And we had 3 cooks and myself, my fiance working in the front and the back, and our manager. And we literally only did that so we could try to pay our staff. That was our assessment, is, can we keep the lights on? We looked at how much money we had in our bank. Our rent was relatively low compared to many of our peers, so we did it. But the whole thing has changed, even after quote unquote reopening. Wearing a face mask, wearing the face shield, wearing gloves, it's, I believe, subconsciously very off-putting. So you can't really feel warm, inviting service from a server if they're covered in all this stuff. You can't see their facial expressions. So the whole thing it's almost like stepping into a new industry for us. We're not really in the business of selling food right now. We're kind of in the business of surviving. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know if everyone agrees with me, but it's become a daily struggle. And I don't want to say unfortunately, we're opening a second restaurant in about 3 weeks. So it's just the anxiety and dare I say panic involved in that is nightmarish. But at least having a little bit more info from our government, I think, might help. Opening on a Friday after the state allowed us to reopen for dine-in service was not something that I think was responsible. And I understand they were trying to help us, maybe not us specifically, but just the economy in general. But it was almost impossible to do safely. So for someone like us specifically, where we only had 2 people on staff, it was very easy to do our proper social distancing, to make sure that everyone was following safety protocols. But even things like picking up a credit card now warrant questioning, right? So who's touched that credit card? Where does it go? Does it go into a terminal where you swipe the credit card? Could that possibly be infected? Do you have to then disinfect just the part that swipes it, right? And then where do you put your gloves? Do you grab a pen? Does that pen have to be sanitized? Does the check presenter have to be sanitized? So for those reasons, and I think a few more, yeah, it's honestly a completely different industry for us personally.
Thank you, Mr. Cow. That's very powerful. And I think we've all gotten a lot out of your presentation. Is there anyone else who has a question for Mr. Cow?
Mark Wilbur does, and Wally Simbab does.
I'll be very brief. I wanted to, Jackson, I felt like I was doing my interviews again. That is exactly what I was hearing. Oh my God, it was even the description of it, because you're right, it's survival. And the commentary for the restaurant guys was so interesting and insightful, because it's kind of a conundrum, as Jackson's talking about. You're trying to keep that place, because the cost of boarding up and losing the site and then having to go and move into a whole new site would be catastrophically much more expensive. And most of them don't have the dough to do that. So they're just trying to get enough cash flow to survive it, pay what they need to survive, and hope for the best on the flip side. And I think that's what Jackson's saying. And that is exactly what I was hearing. Oh my God, to a T. I'm really glad you spoke after me, because I literally was like reliving some of my calls.
Wally Simbab had a question.
Yeah, hi. I wonder how much of your overhead during shutdown is the rent that you have to pay, and whether or not you've heard any discussion about whether or not the state might step in with some sort of rent forgiveness so that the landlord would share the pain of the virus, so it isn't carried entirely by the retailer.
Yeah, so very good question. We heard talks of that happening with the state, and naturally big real estate companies have more money than independent restaurants. So there was supposed to be a moratorium, and we lost that battle. So right now it's on a case-by-case basis. So if a landlord decides that they don't want to decrease rent, from my understanding, they can decide that they don't have to do anything. We've heard of a lot of deferrals for rent. So I guess to answer your question, the most simply, if rent doesn't change, that's our only expense, and it's a non-starter, right? We can't get past that unless we had enough cash in the bank. There are, again, don't quote me on these numbers, tens of thousands of operators who have about 7 days of cash in their bank, and most of them have already closed. The rest of them are on the brink of closing, which is why this number is so high. In our industry, just in LA alone, dozens of very good operators have closed already, completely, permanently, not coming back. On a personal level, if we can't work something out with our landlord other than a deferral, we'll close before we open. It's that simple. So thankfully, they've been able to help us out. But when we were supposed to get that moratorium, I'm not sure exactly how it didn't happen, but I'm guessing the real estate guys lobbied pretty hard to make their case. And to be fair, landlords shouldn't suffer completely. I know a few of my peers who said, screw the landlord, I'm not paying them, I'm staying, they can't do anything. And they kind of have a point, because how is a landlord going to sell a restaurant space right now? Right? And not even right now, in 6 months and 8 months and a year. But again, to be fair, it's not the landlord's fault that this is happening. So we're trying to work out something, for example, personally, that would be a percent rent, right? Just artificial percent. If we do well, the landlord does well. If we do poorly, so do they. And then everyone I'm not going to say everyone wins, but everyone has a fair deal. If either side doesn't budge, it seems like it's just going to be catastrophic for everyone.
Drew Boyles has another question. Drew?
Hopefully last question, real quick. Jackson, I gotta believe, I mean, I'm looking at my business, minimum wage just went up in LA City, which for me means not for you because you don't operate in LA City, but for my business because it's transportation. It's too complicated to try and calculate your wages based on where you operate, so you just go to City LA rates. And a lot of businesses just move to that on top of increased PPE, on top of increased operational complexity, on top of reduced revenue. So I feel like the only thing left for businesses to do in their toolbox is to raise prices. And that's the only way you're going to be able to survive as your wage costs and everything else, your food costs go up as a result of the wage cost, PPE, everything else that's happening. Do you get that sense from the restaurant industry? Because that's something that I'm trying to grapple with is what impact I think ultimately as consumers will be paying the price for not only COVID. Then we're in this like vicious cycle where the people that we want to come to business, their prices are up. They're like, I can't afford to go because my job's in jeopardy or my real estate value just diminished. And when do we get out of this spin we're in?
Yeah, two things that are very interesting about your point. So I have heard that in my industry about raising prices. I'm not sure if I agree with it, only because unless everyone does it, people are going to say naturally, especially with something like food, you're overpriced. I'm just going to go to the other guy. I think that limiting and I'm not sure if this is possible, by the way, but I think that limiting the app delivery companies' percent off the top of restaurants is something that would help restaurant operators a lot if they're willing to do takeout and delivery. I know Los Angeles capped it at 20%. But that's honestly not enough. And again, they shouldn't have to suffer, right? They shouldn't get zero, but they are printing money right now. Everyone is joining onto these apps. If we could cap it at like 10, 12%, they're also backed, the big ones are all backed by VCs, right? So they're supposed to be burning through money right now with the intention of making it one day. So why can't they make a little bit now and restaurants can survive, and then in a year we can revisit, or 8 months, whatever it is. And then with regards to minimum wage, this is obviously a losing battle, but my personal, this is just how I personally feel about this. Servers in restaurants can make and do make in Los Angeles County, and I personally can attest to this, $400 or $500 in a single night of service. That's within 3 or 4 hours, and that is through tips, right? So a cook or a dishwasher is not allowed to receive a penny of that. So if the restaurant operator is forced to increase minimum wage, that means that this person who's getting $400 or $500 in one night in 4 hours of service now has to get paid more from the employer. So cooks, dishwashers, prep cooks, whatever you want to call them, can't actually have a living wage. So I'm all about paying people the proper and fair amount, but I don't see how if someone's getting $80,000 to $90,000 annualized salary through tips, that they should also get a raise just because minimum wage is rising, right? So I'm not proposing that they get a tip credit where the employer can bring them down to $15 an hour annualized, right? I'm proposing that it's minimum pay. So let's say the server gets $60,000 a year on 20, 25 hours a week. That money, that credit can then be given to cooks who now a lot of them are getting minimum wage because restaurants can't afford anything else. So they can now get $18, $20, $22 an hour and afford meals for their families. It's not something that I know how to tackle. That's just been my belief. And thank you for bringing that up because I totally forgot to mention that to all of you.
Thank you very much for your insight and for that presentation. That was really very informative. And I think we got a lot of good information from it. Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? And we'll follow up with that legislation. Please get that information to Jackie.
Sure.
We will follow up with it. Thank you. Are there further questions? All right, then we'll move on to the transportation reports. The first is the Metro report from Jim Butts, Mike Bolke, and Steve Lance.
I don't know who else is here, but Metro.
Jim Butts is on.
Oh, good.
He has been on. Where are you, Jim? Are you still here? I don't know if he's still. Maybe he left.
He left.
I think he left. Okay, so Steve, it's yours.
Okay, very simply, the Metro Board didn't meet in July. We're working on several pieces of pretty important work, mostly related to the recovery plan that's being created. There's nothing specific right now, but Phil Washington is due to come back in September with a series of recommendations to try to reset what's going on at Metro in terms of their transit services, their micro transit services, their TDM services. It should be a fairly comprehensive report, but it probably won't get to us until very end of August or in September. So I think that's it. I don't think there's anything specific. There's no meeting of the Transportation Committee in August. We didn't have one in July. We're going to be meeting with the individual cities, the lead agencies that have Measure R or Measure M projects. We're going to be meeting one-on-one with them during August to get a better feel for how their projects are progressing, what kind of cash flow they're going to need for the next year or so, because we are anticipating that the revenue from the sales tax is going to be reduced anywhere from 18 to 30%. And with that, if that sales tax revenue goes down, it's going to affect each of your cities in your local return program. It's also going to affect the amount of cash that we have available from Metro. So I'm not sure whether we're going to have funds available to do new projects in the fall. Normally we do a call for projects. I don't know if we'll have one. We have to first find out what the cities need to finish the projects that we've already committed to. So that's where we are. David and I will be out talking to your public works directors in August to try and get a better sense of where we are.
Thank you. So let's move on to the program action items, reports and updates. Legislation of interest.
Okay.
Jackie, you're going to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
If you all hopefully have the legislative matrix that's new that I sent out. I thought first of all we'd go through the ones that that were on here from the steering committee and from since the steering committee. I should say in the housing area, a lot of this is also coming from a lot of good research done by the city of Torrance. There are bills here on going to housing, AB 725, AB 1851, AB 2168, AB 2345, all really inhibit local control. And I should add to that, excuse me, SB 1085. So and then, I'm sorry, SB 1138. So all of them are recommended for opposition as bills that inhibit local control and address housing that we think should be addressed at the local level.
So how do you want to take these? Do you want to take them individually or in groups?
I think that we should take them in groups or we can pull out any that anybody has a question on. If you want me to continue, I can, for just the ones that were in the original report, we had two that we were supporting or recommending support. The recommending support is AB 1314. This was discussed at the steering committee. It has to do with making settlements and judgments transparent to the public. And the steering committee asked me to find out what the sheriff would do because of the contract cities. And I did speak with the sheriff and the contract cities. And the answer I got was that it's obviously proposed legislation. They don't know how they deal with it, but they would definitely comply. And they might disaggregate the data by city or supervisorial district, but they didn't know at this time how exactly they would do it. And then the other bill that we're recommending support is, what am I missing here? Is SB 1130, which is a telecommunications bill to provide that the California Advanced Services Fund continue. It does not have new funds in it, but it does allow for that to continue. So those are the bills I originally talked about. I don't know if you want to ask any questions on those, or if I should go on to the other one that
yeah, let's take them in groups. So does anyone have any comment or question on AB 1314 or SB 1130? And I do have a comment on AB 1314. I think that was something we brought up in the steering committee. And my comment on that is that the publication of use of force judgments, I don't see a problem with. The publication of use of force settlements, I would not recommend that we support that, because cities make judgments all the time to settle cases, not necessarily based on anything that was done incorrectly or because the officer made a mistake, but sometimes it's just a risk management decision that it's cheaper to just pay the settlement than to fight it, because the cost of litigation is so much greater. So to put those settlements out for the public view, so that the public would scrutinize the reasoning behind it, I think would send the wrong message, because the city doesn't necessarily do something wrong or admit that it did something wrong when it settles a case. It very often settles a case just for nuisance value. That's my comment about 1314. So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to take them individually? Oh, I see hands up. Ralph, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I echo the same sentiments that you raised, because when we're raising concerns regarding settlements and also the dollar value for those settlements, many of them are no-fault nuisance settlements, and we just simply are trying to put this to rest without exploiting it, because what's going to happen is that all of a sudden you're going to get ambulance chasers, and people are just going to keep following and following to the point that it ultimately may bankrupt a city. I clearly recommend that we oppose AB 1314. Thank you.
B, you have a question? B. Derringer?
Actually, it was more of a comment along the lines that you, Olivia, and Ralph shared. I don't see even the position actually of putting out the judgments, because even if you don't put out the amount that was settled for, I think it's important for people who have a right to know who can actually do something about it. Like, if check into it and say, is this the same officer that's costing the city this amount of dollars each time? Is there something we need to do? And people who have a business right to know, that can actually be in a position to do anything. But to just give it to the public, that would encourage people to sue, because they look and see, oh, people are suing. And especially if you put down the amount that they recovered, it just becomes more of a means by which to get money, which does not really suit the purposes that I think they're trying to serve by making it transparent. It should be going to people who are in a position of making changes, if there need to be changes, so that it becomes more available to them, but not to everybody, the public in general. So I would say we should oppose the whole thing.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions about AB 1314? So I will entertain.
there's somebody.
Did someone have a comment?
I raised my hand only to just go back to your original comments, Olivia, that it sounded like you were in support of part of it. So, but not the settlements aspect. And so, did you want to recommend support with amendment? And I don't see Jeff on the line to get an idea of what the league is thinking on this, but I concur with my colleagues as it relates to settlement issues. I think the devil's in the details here. The intent is clearly to kind of to be able to be transparent about judgments in situations where there is clearly a bigger issue going on. But this could open up a Pandora's box. So I think we have to wade carefully as to, and by the way, we should probably be talking with our legislators about this and about the complexities of this, because you don't want it to just simply pass as is. That would have huge implications on each of our jurisdictions.
The league has a watch position.
All right. Well then, I'll entertain a motion that we also take a watch position, as opposed to a support, or because and also perhaps make it clear that we might consider supporting it if it only applies to judgments but not settlements. So I'll entertain a motion that we maintain a watch position at this time.
Madam Chair, you have 2 more raised hands as well.
Okay, George Chen.
I think we
Oh,
just
there-
go for
yeah,
broke
okay.
and we just go for broke and oppose it and let them come back with something else. You know, getting to me, taking the watch position on this one when we heard good arguments against it, I would just oppose it and then let them come back with something else.
All right. Britt Huff.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jackie, are you aware of any other legislation that kind of separates these issues out, but that does in fact focus on the use of force? Or is this the only legislation where this kind of combined?
I am not aware of it. And I think that I found it. I'm trying to figure out why it's even here. And I think I was at the League Legislative Workshop, and I think the League is watching it. It is a bill that they're looking at. So, and they haven't had time, and maybe B knows more about what the League is doing, because I know Jeff isn't here. But no, I know of no other bills like this.
Ralph, did you have another comment?
Yes, I'm just following Rodney's position. I think we ought to take a firm position in opposing it. Thank you.
Thank you. B?
Yes, I would simply ask we make a motion to oppose, and we can give reasons, and just like we said, that we don't think that judgments, the amount of the judgment should be given out, and it really should go to people who are in a position to make changes if warranted, rather than the public in general.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
That would be my motion to oppose and then provide those reasons.
Franklin seconds.
Okay. So who's, Jackie, are you making a tally of who's making the motion in second?
I'm doing that, but then I'm asking David and Natalie to do I think we need either a roll call or raising hand, or, I don't know if everybody has access to mark the vote on the participants.
Okay, so I've entertained a motion to oppose. I've gotten a second. So all those in favor of opposing passage of AB 13 signify by use the yes button. You have a yes button. Use the yes button if you oppose it. Does everybody know how to do that?
I don't see a yes button.
You don't have one?
Okay, at the bottom where the raised hand is, there's also a yes, no, and go slower.
You got to click onto participants. Then it pops up.
Yes. Does everyone have access to it? I think not, because I only see, okay, now I see it. There are more people. All right, more, okay. It's populating now.
Okay.
Now I'm still not seeing, I only have 4. Is that?
No, I don't think we're doing this right. You have to click on participants.
Yes.
And you find your name, and if you, or at the
And
bottom
then
of all the names, at the bottom,
Then reactions.
Okay.
bottom of all the names, it says raise hand, yes, no, and then that's, I think we're raising.
If you'd like, I can just do a roll call and we can
Why don't we just do a roll call?
Well, Olivia, I think you just asked for the yeses. If you ask for the yeses and the nos, I think we would all respond.
Oh, that's true. If you want if everybody would just respond, let's see what happens.
Respond.
Yeah.
Okay, may I have, all those in favor of opposing 1314 signify by saying yes.
No, you say
Yes.
no.
No,
All
put
those in
it-
favor.
No, if you're in favor of opposing,
Opposing is a yes vote.
Yes.
opposing is a yes vote. Okay, let's do this again. If you want to oppose 1314, say yes.
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 No, well, but mark your, what, if you could
I
mark
think you
your,
need to take a roll call, Jackie.
what?
I think you need to take a roll call. I can't tell from this,
Okay.
please take a roll call.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Natalie or David to record this, but I've Shobi Derringer as a yes, Britt Huff is a yes, Olivia Valentine. What are,
Oh, okay, I haven't done it yet.
no, but just tell me what you are.
Yes.
You're a yes. Christian Horvath is a no. Hildy Stern is a no. John Cruikshank is a yes. Kenny Cow is a yes. Ralph Franklin is a yes. Rodney Tanaka
Yes.
is a yes. And B Derringer, Drew Boyles, you haven't voted.
I'm going to abstain because I have no idea where my council will stand on this one. Thank you.
Okay. George Chen is a,
Jennifer, I'll need to
yeah,
abstain.
I know. I was figured you were going to abstain too. Jennifer will abstain, and George Chen is a yes. Jim Gaisley.
Yes.
Okay. So Jim Gaisley's a yes, and then, okay, the other, Stacy Armato is a no. And the other elected officials are from the same city. So I haven't done the count, but it looks like there's many more yeses than nos. So we will oppose, and the motion is to explain the reasons why.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Well, we have SB 1130 that we're supporting, and then the others that we're opposing.
Okay, so SB 1130. So do we need to go through that, go through each one of those one by one? SB 1130, is there, okay, I think we probably need to go through them because you said that we're supporting it, but has there been a vote on it?
Yeah, it's coming from these are coming from the steering committee.
Okay, so we need to take a vote here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
and 1130 is the one that has to do with telecommunications to continue the California Advanced Services Fund.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to support SB 1130.
So moved, Horvath.
Second,
Boyles.
Cruikshank.
Oh, sorry.
Horvath and Cruikshank.
I'm just happy my microphone's working again.
Okay.
All right, so all those in favor of SB 1130 signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
And those opposed say no.
Any no's?
All right. There appear to be no no's. Okay.
And what about abstentions? Jennifer, are you voting on this or not?
I'll abstain, Jackie, thanks.
Okay, so if you can mark that, I'm David or Natalie. Okay, then we have all of the battery of bills that are no bills, which are mostly, they're all housing bills, and they're listed under housing on the legislative matrix and on your agenda all at once.
Okay, so did you want to take these as a group, Jackie? Or
I think so. I mean, the reason why we would oppose all of them is that they are stepping into local control and taking away options from cities.
All right, so I'm going to look at at all of these next bills in a group. AB 725, AB 1851, AB 2168, AB 2345, SB 1085, and SB 1138, and taking them all together as a group. Is there anyone who wants to pull out anyone for special discussion? So I'm going to entertain a motion that we oppose all of these bills as removing or reducing local control.
Boyles opposed.
Opposed? Wait, okay, are you saying you're
Yeah,
opposing?
making a motion to oppose all of them.
All right, thank you. Next, the second?
Chen second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yes means you oppose them.
Right.
Yeah.
Those who do not want to oppose them say no. All right, so it's unanimous. Those
And
bills
now,
are
I
all.
think, Jennifer, does Jennifer want to abstain?
Yes, please.
All
Okay,
right, thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer
Okay.
abstains. All right.
thank you. So then we have bills, three bills I suggested, or three issues to add to the agenda. Right away, we found out today that cannabis penalties for illegal operations, we've been notified that that will not move this year. So I'm taking that off consideration because it's not going anywhere. So that's down. That leaves us with SB 570. I was on a call, a town hall or something with Elmer Succi, and he explained, at the last meeting, we took a position on his proposed bond measure. He explained at this meeting that the proposed bond, that he was not going to be pushing the proposed bond measure, but instead he was going to be putting his support behind AB 570. And what AB 570 does is it takes the current money that would be in the California Advanced Services Fund and it bonds it so that you would get about $1 billion that would be available earlier than later, and it would not need to go to the voters. And so there is no more proposed ballot measure, and the funding for broadband is actually going to be in AB 570. So that's why there's a recommendation for support.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to support AB 570.
So moved, Horvath.
Second,
Tanaka.
those in favor say yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. Anyone abstaining?
Yes.
Jennifer?
please.
Jennifer, okay.
Okay. Then there's one more issue, and it was brought to my attention.
What
by
about AB 2122? Is that it?
No, AB 2122 was not, we were notified today it's not going to be moving. The legislature's, it's pretty much dead for the year. So
Okay.
I'm taking it off the agenda. So that leaves us with the county ballot measure, the potential that they've been discussing. And in my report, I did not take, I'm going to turn this over to B in a second, but I did not take a position or a recommendation to give to you based on the merits of where county money should go. My recommendation is that we oppose them putting a ballot measure on the ballot because they're asking to put in the charter a restriction on where money should go. And I think that we elect them for the flexibility of being able to make those choices. So this is not really to discuss whether you want to defund police or not defund police. Mine is more of a good governance kind of a recommendation to you. But I would turn this over to B because she's the one that brought it to my attention.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Jackie. Do you want me to speak now or do you want me to wait?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, it came to my attention because it's up to 20% reduction from the budgets of both of the LA County Sheriff's, the District Attorney's Office, and LA County Probation. There's some money that from the Superior Court that they're thinking of taking away as well, but most of that is state funded. And the idea is that they're going to be devoting it to some other programs, but as Jackie mentioned, it is a charter amendment so that it can only be changed by having another ballot initiative. And so regardless of what their concerns are, I mean, this is usually a function that the board does in terms of setting budget. I've never heard of basically a budget item being sent to the public to determine for time immemorial. And we do already have quite a few other programs that there's really very little incentive for people to take advantage of because there's no leverage that they have, because they're not mandatory in most cases, and they're not going to result in any consequences if they don't take advantage of those programs. So we're going to suffer public safety problems because there's going to be billions of dollars that will not go into deputy sheriffs, DAs that will be able to prosecute cases, and probation officers that will be able to monitor the persons who are on probation to make sure that they're taking advantage of all of the services and keeping themselves on a straight and narrow. So I think we should oppose this generally, and it has to be put in before July 28th, because that's when they're going to be hearing it. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
It's Jim Gately from the media. I have a quick question. I wonder if they're going to reach out to the 88 cities that contract with the sheriff and stuff. You know, they're going to affect the safety in our cities. Some of the cities in the South Bay have their own police departments. They won't be affected, but we will be. And no one's reached out to us and asked our opinion. That concerns me. That the 88 cities in the county, contract cities in the county, should be involved in a decision like this.
Right. And it was a very whirlwind thing that very few people, found out about. It was an add-on to the agenda, and 4 of the 5 supervisors voted to take it to the next meeting and have county council prepare a sample ordinance to place on the as a proposition on the November ballot. And I have heard that county council made an opinion that it's going to lead to a lot of lawsuits for the county if they do put this on the ballot, which is another thing, since if the county made a 8% cut countywide, so all of the departments are suffering that already. So this would be 10% to 20% over and above that 8% that they're thinking of cutting from those 3 departments. And that's a serious thing. I know for what we're doing, I work in the busiest courthouse in the county other than downtown, which is Compton. And we are stretched very thinly, and we can't take any more. We're not going to be able to hire any more people. We were supposed to hire 200 people to make up for attrition and so forth, to do what we were supposed to do. The 8% took that out. So now we're having to lose DAs, and that's really going to be a loss, as well as people that, deputy sheriffs that won't be able to respond quick enough. And so people are going to die on the street that could have been saved if they had been able to make a quick response time. It's really going to be a devastating impact if this goes on. And the public won't understand it. You can't really explain that in a budget initiative format. So this is something they should really take very seriously and not allow it, and make a decision on their own rather than putting it as a budgeted as an initiative on the for a budget matter.
So I understand. Let's see, Rodney, Rodney Tanaka, you have a question, comment?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So Jim, I understand about you being with the county, but it also has a trickle down effect with even cities that have their own police departments, because we can't ask for mutual aid. We can't get any help from anybody. Like B said too, the courts will be jammed up. It's just, I think they meant well when they did this, but they didn't think it out. And it's just a rush to get this thing passed, and it's not very well thought of. So I'm totally opposed to this. And so, if they want to do something like this, they need to really sit down and think about what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and not just try to rush to get this on some ballot or something to be voted on. But it's true, B. It'll totally inundate us with stuff, and it'll put an economic stress on everything that we do. So thanks, and I'm opposed.
Thank you. Ralph, you have further comment?
Yes, I definitely support B and Rodney. The ideal of knowing that we as a city of Inglewood has beefed up the South Bay region with becoming the sports entertainment hub, with the World Cup coming, with the NFL Super Bowl coming, the Olympics coming, we need that mutual aid. So we need that funding for as much law enforcement, for the safety of the world that's going to be coming to these different events. And particularly in the South Bay, it's going to impact the various retail stores throughout the region. So I clearly am in support of B and Rodney's position. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further comments? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to oppose county charter amendment.
Olivia,
Is that from?
that's from
Oh,
Hildy. I have a question.
all right.
Do we know which supervisors are proposing this?
Yes.
It doesn't look like it says it here. Oh, did I
Yes.
miss that?
It was a motion brought by Supervisor Solis and by Sheila
Kuhil.
Kuehl, and then was joined by Supervisor Ridley Thomas and Janice Hahn.
Right.
So the only one that voted against it going forward to the next meeting with a ordinance proposal for the charter amendment was Supervisor Barger.
I
So we
think that
definitely, need
I
to
think
do
that-
something, yeah.
I think Supervisor Hahn expressed reservations and then she voted for it. So,
Thank you.
So I will entertain a motion to oppose the county charter amendment,
I would so move.
Second, Ralph Franklin.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we oppose the county charter amendment regarding social service funding. All those in favor of opposing the amendment signify by saying yes.
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 Are there any
Yes.
no's? I hear no no's. All right, so then,
Jennifer?
Yes,
oh, is there an abstention?
There's abstentions.
Okay.
Are there abstentions?
Yes.
Stacy Armato abstained, Jennifer Lamarque abstained, and Hildy Stern abstained. Any other abstentions?
Boyles and Horvath.
Boyles and Horvath. So that's 5 abstentions. Okay.
All right, thank you all. So then it passed that we are opposing the county charter amendment.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the South Bay Fiber Network.
The South Bay Fiber Network is moving along very well. Connections are being made. The one thing I wanted to announce, because I'm very excited about it, is I was able to get in touch with through the good works of the City of Torrance. They gave me the name of their consultant who's been working on their cybersecurity issues, and that consultant will be doing a workshop on August 19th at 10 a.m. on cybersecurity and as much lessons learned from Torrance as they can. There's still, I guess, a lot of investigation going on in Torrance, but if they will talk about, how cities can protect themselves. So I've sent that to your city managers and your IT directors, and hopefully each of the cities will have somebody on that call. This is the very first of what we hope will be a series of tech talks. Now that we all have this great network, we want to have experts come in and talk about the kinds of things that you can do with this network. And so we'll be announcing more things. One of the tech talks will probably be somebody from Equinix, which is the place that the data is stored, and you can learn more about what happens there. So these are mostly for staff, but obviously elected officials are involved and are welcome to join. So I wanted to tell you about that because I think it's pretty exciting. If we move on to senior services, I would like to probably ask Britt Huff she's got this incredible meeting planned. So Britt, do you want to tell everybody about that?
Yes, the senior working group is meeting next Tuesday, July 28th at 9:30 by Zoom.
Somebody's not muted. Who? Okay.
Thank you. And we have as our guest speaker, Dr. Eric Dar, MD, who's the Chief of Infectious Diseases Division at Harbor UCLA here in the South Bay. And he has been tapped by Dr. Fauci to be the director of a vaccine trial for the COVID-19 virus here in the South Bay. There are going to be 3 different locations, one at UCLA, one at the county hospital, and then one at Harbor. So we are hoping to promote this among our senior population especially. Also, the people with underlying health conditions and minorities who have been especially targeted by this virus, and encouraging people to sign up. This is a stage 3 vaccine protocol that they're developing. The second stage one was involved young, sturdy people, average age 35. They got very good results with minimal side effects. And so the hope is that our seniors, that our city officials especially, can help encourage seniors in their cities to participate in this. So we're going to be, the organization that, the nonprofit that I work with, we're partnering with Dr. Dar in holding Zoom meetings around the South Bay. Jackie was hoping to work this onto the schedule for the board, because it would certainly be important for you all to hear about this. I don't think we could really work them until October, which, you know, I'm sure it's going to still be relevant. They're going to be recruiting 30,000 people in the South Bay. And so I think anybody who would be interested in participating and attending the Zoom meeting next Tuesday, I think we could send out that link to any council people who would like to participate. I might just mention that this is not with a live vaccine, so it's not like they're going to inject you with the COVID virus. And those people who participate, the people who, half will receive the placebo and half the vaccine. The people who participate who got the placebo will get priority in receiving the vaccine when it is approved. And so they're hoping to move rapidly forward with this, and we're very excited, especially that our South Bay residents don't have to drive all the way to UCLA or downtown or something, that is just going to be here at Harbor. So please let, I guess, Jackie know if you would like to receive that, the link for the meeting next Tuesday. Any questions?
Thank you, Britt. Are there any questions for Britt? Thank you, Britt.
So I hope you help yourselves. Not that you're all elderly or anything, but you we want to set an example.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Homeless Services.
Yeah, and Grace Farwell is with us today to give the report on homeless services. Grace?
All right, good evening. I hope everyone can hear me well. I'm having some some difficulty with my internet right now. But also just to comment on what Britt said, I did send out the Zoom invitation to all of our elected officials in the South Bay. So you should have received that invitation about the meeting on Tuesday. And also I noticed that David put the link to the Zoom invitation in the chat box. So going on to homeless. So today was supposed to have been the day that the homeless point in time city data was going to be released, but it has been delayed to July 30th, so another week. And a lot of that is due to the fact that LAHSA was holding office hours to discuss individual city and COG concerns. And so some of our cities did take advantage of it. El Segundo, Inglewood, Lawndale, Torrance, and then also the COG. We had a conversation with LAHSA last Friday about some of the information. I know El Segundo was really interested in the survey data that was collected and how that was collected. Inglewood wanted to make sure that the boundaries were correct and that there wasn't because there's a part of Inglewood that is, LAPD is there. So it's the city, it's the county, as well as Inglewood. So we wanted to make sure that was all set. So anyway, this is the first time LASA has done these office hours. And it's, when I was talking with a representative from LASA, she said it's been very fruitful. And they're learning a lot from the cities, and the cities are actually learning a lot more about the process. So it's been really positive. Now, keep in mind that the data that's going to be released next week was from the point in time count in January. So a lot of things have changed because of COVID. So just keep that in mind when you see what the numbers are. And then with Project Room Key, we are at the 3-month mark, because originally when this program was started, it was going to be, they were anticipating a 90-day program, but they're looking at extensions of 1, 2, and 3 months at this point. And especially because of the fact that we have not really flattened out the curve, those extensions could continue for a little bit longer. We do have one site in Lomita that is in the process of decommissioning at the end of this month. And an update from them, they had 53 clients at that hotel, and 12 of them, so they have rehousing plans for all of the residents. And 12 have been connected to permanent supportive housing, 18 have been connected to rapid rehousing, and then others are in the queue for problem solving and reunification. And a positive from the PRK, the Project Room Key, is that it's been like a one-stop shop for services. So for instance, LASA has worked to get the DMV resources available at the hotel, so without having to take a client to the DMV to get their California ID, and that's very helpful for housing and getting people into housing. DPSS has been on site for the EBT cards. Providence has been there enrolling clients in CalFresh as well as Medi-Cal. And according to Harbor Interfaith, the residents have been very receptive to all the services that have been provided for them at the Lomita site. And then also just to know, none of the Project Room Key clients are going to the bridge homes that have just opened recently in San Pedro and Wilmington. And then there's also, moving forward, looking at Project Home Key. So the state legislature passed $550 million toward the acquisition of motels and hotels statewide. And so the NOFA was just released recently, and the County of Los Angeles is reviewing it. And the goal is to transition some motels and hotels into interim shelter or permanent supportive housing. And at this point, the LA County Real Estate Division is reaching out to the various motel and hotel owners to ascertain their interest. And so far, a few have been interested, others are not, and they're wanting to go back to being a hotel or a motel. So stay tuned for that. We don't know locations yet for any of that, but that is something that is, we'll see more movement and get more information as time goes on. And then, as I mentioned, the bridge home sites are both open and now in San Pedro and Wilmington. They opened earlier this month. And as of Tuesday, there were 65 people that have been relocated from some of the encampments in San Pedro. So they're in the San Pedro bridge home. And there are 55 people in the Wilmington bridge home. And then we also looked at the Measure H strategies for the current fiscal year. We reviewed those strategies, and the COG submitted comments related to strategy A1 and A5 on homeless prevention program. We wanted to make sure, we really feel that especially with COVID, that more than ever, money needs to be put into the prevention of homelessness. And then we also looked at strategy E7 to strengthen the coordinated entry system. One of the areas where they were recommending a reduction of $1 million was in housing navigation services. And if our goal is to get folks housed, we didn't feel it was a good idea to reduce money in that area. And then also we sent a reminder to the county of the importance of COGS as partners, and so that we can be notified in a timely manner of any appropriate information to share with cities, because we happen to learn after the fact of some information that we think could have been very helpful for our cities. It has now since then been sent out to all of our contacts, our homeless contacts within each city. And then the last thing is, the latest I've heard is that Measure H is expecting a 17% reduction in revenue over for this coming year, or for this current year. So that is it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Grace.
Drew has his hand up.
Okay, Drew? Oh, and then I see Britt.
Did I hit my limit? Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. Real quick, the July 30th data, or the account that was delayed, when they did the open house, Grace, did our agencies get a preliminary look at the numbers, or no?
All of the cities were invited to a webinar, and so there should have been staff at the city of El Segundo that did receive it. I believe the city manager received it, and deputy city manager, as well as the police chief. So they saw the preliminary information.
They did see the preliminary numbers.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Hence the questions about how the survey data was collected, I'm guessing. Thank you.
Britt, you have a question?
That is why they have questions.
Yes, I had a question about your comment about the 17% reduction in revenue with Measure H. What does that mean? Or what's the purpose? Why is that happening?
Sales tax is down.
It's a sales tax measure. Measure H is sales
Yeah,
tax.
that's the sales tax. We're not spending because of COVID.
Well, that's actually not very much, considering what's going on, I guess.
Yeah,
right. And
I was going to say, it seems consistent with what Steve Lance said about Metro, saying their local return is down, and they were saying it's about 18%. So I'm not sure anybody really knows, but it sounds like they're pretty consistent.
Yeah.
The numbers lag by a couple of months, so we're not going to get the full month impacts of May and June until later.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the SCAG Regional Early Action Program funds.
Right, this is I think I might have mentioned this last time. There's funding coming to the subregions, and it's based on our RENA numbers, and we don't have those RENA numbers yet, but if they were basing it on our RENA numbers last time, it would be about $600,000. So it's a lot of money. We would not get the money. SCAG would have that money that they would dedicate to use in our subregion. And the purpose of the money is to support and promote the development of housing. I've been trying to work with your community development directors on ideas for what we could do. One of the things that I think it would be maybe helpful to do is, as you know, we've done climate action planning and adaptation strategies by having somebody at the COG who can do a whole lot of generic things for all the cities. And when you do your housing element, when you do other things, we could hire a planning officer with this money that the cities could then draw on as a sort of an extra staff, an adjunct. And so we're looking at that possibility. Another idea is, and we'd have to tie this to how it relates to increasing housing. But one of the things we've been saying is we don't know, and I don't think the community development actors have a good fix on the accessory dwelling units. How many accessory dwelling units are being built? You know, I guess permits being pulled, but are they really affordable? You know, what's really happening with accessible dwelling units? And it would be great to do a study. And I think that they would be interested in doing that, but we have to figure out how we can tell SCAG that means it's tied to increasing housing. I assume that if we made the study so that we could understand the impacts, we could then say, you know, with more accessory dwelling units, we would be able to do such and such. So we're looking at that. I have a meeting with SCAG coming up in a couple of weeks, but I would really ask your community development directors, as you do your housing elements, as you do a lot of your general plan updates, is there some way that we can help you with the funding that SCAG is providing to the subregion by having a staff person, for example? And I should say, I think this money is available through December 2023. Sarah Patterson might still be on the call, but I think it's 2023. And so this is really important, and I need their help in helping us decide where this money is going. And I will obviously bring back reports as we do more figuring this out.
I think rather than accessible housing units, it's ancillary housing units.
Accessory dwelling units, what did I say?
You said it's ancillary dwelling units, I believe. Yeah, I think you said accessible dwelling units.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Accessory dwelling units.
It's accessory dwelling. Whatever I said, I meant accessory dwelling units, okay? So please let me know, send me your suggestions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie, you want to talk about the special board meeting that's coming up?
Right. I think there is a subcommittee, and that subcommittee is Christian Horvath, Olivia Valentine, and Hildy Stern. And we met with Jim Butts, and we've also talked with Joe Buscaino. And we're planning, the current plan is that on August 20th, which is 3 weeks from now, and the week before our regular board meeting, we would have a special board meeting starting at 6. And the board meeting would be what you want, all you want to know about police operations. The idea is that you really can't monitor the police unless you understand how they work. You can't, and what are their metrics for success? What are they, how should you as a responsible elected official monitor them and ask them questions, and what you should be asking, and what should you be telling your manager to set the tone, and what you should be looking at when you hire a police chief. Jim Butts and Joe Buscaino have extensive experience. Jim has been the chief of 3 departments. Joe's been a line officer. And so they will be the program. And it's really great that we can feature our own who are real experts in all of this. The idea of having just the 2 of them is that in our last one, there wasn't time for discussion. This would be, they talk about 30 minutes, and then we'd be asking you to be participants and be discussing. So you're going to hear a lot more about this. Olivia, Hildy, Christian, do you want to add anything?
Well, I would like to add that we really depend on you guys for your input. So please get your questions to Jackie. All the things you want to ask your police department, get your questions to Jackie so that we can have some really, really good questions and discussion. That's all I have.
George has his hand up.
George?
Yes, thank you. Since it's a special board meeting, just want to make sure I know the protocols here. Can all council members participate? Is this still a public meeting? If there are people who are of interest, because we got a couple of experts talking here, there might be more people who want to.
Oh, well, first of all, I hope you know that at any board meeting, all members can participate. Just every city just gets 1 vote. But this is the same kind of thing. This is a board meeting. And so anybody that wants to come, it's a Brown Act meeting. Any of your city staff or council can participate.
Okay, but there's no, I assume it's more like understanding. I don't think we're not voting on anything, right?
Right, we're not voting.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? So again, please get your questions to Jackie. Anything that you would like to know from your own police department, get your questions to Jackie so that we can have a really vigorous discussion.
Right. It was a great meeting yesterday, and I think our speakers will have an awful lot to offer. I'll just go on real fast because.
Yes, please, go ahead.
On the office update, there's really nothing to say except that I just found out from David, we ordered new furniture for the receptionist, and it came, it's installed. So we're actually ready, but our staff, no one is working there. Staff comes in if they need to use any of the machines or pick up supplies or whatever. And probably we will stay on some kind of a telework schedule, even after that we're done with all of this, because we have a lot of employees that work in the field anyway. So it's been very effective. I am really impressed. I think we're being very, very productive. And, but I do want to, I can't wait to show you and have an open house so you can see what our office looks like. So that's our office update. And the rest is for all of you. It's a discussion for the board.
All right, so now we're going to share our city responses to the coronavirus, reopening strategies, protests, and other challenges. So I'm going to open it up for an open discussion. Whatever you would like to talk about, what challenges your city is facing. Do me a favor and please use the raise hand button so that I can see who's trying to speak, because I don't always see you if you just wave your hand, but I will see the raise hand button. So please please hit the raise hand button if you want to say something. And I start with George Chin. Go ahead.
Probably 2 or 3 topics. This last Tuesday, we actually had a resolution against anti-Asian xenophobia and sentiments. And under the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, because we've been having quite a few events, just people, vandalizing lately a restaurant in the Eastgate area. So that was passed this past Tuesday. The COVID, I kind of shared already, I think during Mark's talk, I shared about COVID. The city of Torrance is still doing pretty good with 54 deaths and over 90% in the senior care center. And that's why I was asking if there's a way, we don't all get penalized. And then the other thing is yesterday, I had a personal Zoom dialogue. It's the second one, actually. Most of you know that for the last 18 to 19 months, we've been having Black Lives Matter protesting the city council meetings every week. So even virtual, we get it too. And there was a couple of mothers who talked about, is there opportunity to stand up a diversity task force? And so I actually responded to them. And so it's been fruitful. They just want to have dialogue. And I think it wasn't, a brutal Black Lives Matter organization dialogue. It was people who truly want to talk about, diversity. And they felt very appreciative, just the fact that someone's willing to just talk. And so I know somebody sent me an email yesterday and said, why don't you do something like Assemblyman Al Martucci? So basically, I'm on my second one already. I just don't make it broadcast news, so you guys are hearing it for the first time. But I found it very positive that we can have a dialogue and we can agree to disagree, or some people don't even know the inner workings of how city hires people through this civil service process, through merit-based and testing. And council members, we don't go and say, hire this person when they hire for a job. So they're very appreciative. That's it.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yes, we actually have a number of things. City Hall's been open for the public for about a month with appointments only. And each employee that does attend City Hall must go through a screening process with a registered nurse daily. We also have the semi-monthly COVID-19 testing for every employee. They have to be tested, and we're using the LA County Health Department location at the Fabulous Forum. The other issue of concern, we had to reach out to Congressman Waters, and I don't know if you're dealing with this in your cities, but the U.S. Post Office letter carriers are being impacted with COVID-19.
Yes,
and
they are.
mail is not being delivered to homes, and has heightened the concern of many people that still pay bills by snail mail, and there's a time restraint as to getting the bill in and getting it back out. Two, several people have indicated that their credit cards expired and they were looking for new ones to come in. They couldn't get those. And then the most important one was people rely on prescription medicine that is critical for their health. And that has been a heightened concern. And so we've been working with the Postmaster General in our area, as well as our congressperson, to make sure that we work on this. And then we found out while we were dealing with the postmasters that there's another issue we all got to get prepared for, and that is the November 3rd election by voting by mail. And we're relying on the Postal Service, who's now in heightened concern about being able to provide the current public service, let alone the mega service is going to occur with the avalanche of people now voting by mail as opposed to going to polling sites. So that's my report.
Thank you, Ralph. Drew, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, El Segundo, we just opened up for City Hall, not just for appointments. And we're not as stringent as Inglewood. I like what you guys are doing with the semi-monthly test, but we are doing, temperature checks, every employee sign in, log. And we stood up on Tuesday night a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. We have already gotten incredible response in terms of applicants for that committee. We're going to extend it, I think, until mid-August. So we're excited about that. That's all I have. Thank you.
So can you expand a little bit more, Drew, about your diversity, equity, inclusion committee?
I can. Give me a second here. I will. You want to go to someone else real quick, and I could pull up my council agenda for the high points?
Sure. Thank you. Christian.
Yeah, I'll just say, based on our presenters today, we have created basically kind of as much of a streamlined process for businesses using temporary use permits. So in the Riviera Village, we've actually shut down portions of Catalina Boulevard, and they are operating. Restaurants and or retailers can operate out in the street. There's barricades up. Some other areas of the city, we can't do that. So we're working with people that have private parking lots and allowing them to set up, especially this is primarily really helping restaurants, but that they can set up in their parking lots. We're waiving all those fees, and we're just looking at ways to be as creative as possible to allow certain businesses to be able to function outdoors during this time. I've told you how our police department is functioning in the past. They still continue to do that, and I think that's all I got right now.
Christian, I have a question for you. How do you manage with the parking? If they're using the parking lot to set up restaurants, what are they doing with the cars? How are they parking the cars?
We haven't really discussed that, so I would assume that people are just parking elsewhere and then walking to the business.
That's very interesting. Okay. Drew, you had have you?
Yes.
You ready? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just hit the high points. The goal is that there's some measurable outcomes that are lasting and accountable, and that we dovetail whatever comes out of the committee. Recommendations that council approves is going to be an appointed committee after the interviews, that those will be incorporated into the strategic plan. The eligibility is resident of El Segundo, or a student of a public or private high school in El Segundo, or an El Segundo property owner, or be employed by a business located in El Segundo. And the study topics are going to be public safety, including a review of police department policies, practices, training, diversity, and future direction. Citywide organization, including a review of city government policies, practices, training, diversity, et cetera. Community at large, including a review of our demographic data, history, trends, et cetera. And then local economy, including a review of private sector diversity policies, practices, and training. And the timeline is, we're going to hire a consultant to help us with this because we definitely want to get it right. We're going to cut off the applications, I think, at the end of this month, and stand up the committee by early September, and then ideally have the recommendations no later than February or March of 2021 or sooner.
Thank you. John Cruikshank.
Thank you, Olivia. our city council, all 5 of us, have basically want to help our school districts. And so for us right now, there's nothing more important than helping them out. We know that the governor's recent order is that all the schools be shut down unless they meet certain number of days. And so there's a lot of confusion, but our superintendent, Dr. Chernis, in the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District has been developing 2 plans. Of course, one to work completely virtual or have kids at virtual, or to have a hybrid plan of where students can either attend classes or be virtual. And so he's moving forward with that plan. He's asked all of the peninsula cities to provide our city facilities that could potentially be used for overflow classroom students. And so right now our cities are putting that information together with the hopes that we are at least able to have some type of hybrid system for our students, because we do have a number of dual working parents and they need to get back to work. Of course, nowhere in the South Bay is it inexpensive to live. And so our city is going to be providing that information, and the superintendent is going to be coming back to us next week with that plan. So for us, that's one of our big focuses, is to help our school districts at least get some type of hybrid plan so that some of our students can actually be in the classroom during the workday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rodney Tanaka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as COVID goes, our numbers are about 646 with about 33 deaths. My understanding is I think we're about 4th in the South Bay. Our city hall now continues to remain closed. All of our city offices with limited staff, most of it's phone calls only right now. Our chief of police and his command staff, for the last couple of Saturdays, we do district policing. So they've had this program called a talking tour, where it's a Zoom meeting and anybody can join in. And the chief has actually been explaining to our community about policing in our city and how things are done and what they're doing, how they're trained, and they're open for questions. This Saturday will be the last talking tour. So if you're on our website and you see how to get on, you might want to just listen to that. Our human services and parks and recreation continue to do food giveaways, which is pretty good for right now. People are, by the hundreds, are driving up. We did 2 trailer full of milk, gallons of milk, and I believe it's all gone. And we did a lot of food giveaways. They've also opened up a summer camp, which is really great for some of our kids. Social distancing and masks and everything, but the kids actually get to interact a little bit with each other. And I guess the last thing we're doing is because of the restaurants not being able to serve, we have allowed them with the proper protocols that they can eat outside. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any others? All right, Kenny Cow. Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Just to build on Mayor Cruikshank's point about the school districts asking the cities to possibly share facilities. As most of you probably know, the CIF Southern Section gave out its outlook for this upcoming year, and they're basically eliminating one of the seasons and combining all the sports into 2. So essentially there's effectively a fall season starting as early as December and then a spring season, which means that a lot of the facilities at each of the schools are going to be impacted by boys and girls tennis needing to use the same courts, for example. So as part of that process, we're also looking at our city facilities as well to perhaps share with the school districts. And I see a lot of collaboration in the future as a matter of necessity between school districts and the cities. I look at what Rancho Palos Verdes is doing. I know they're having their council meetings in person. We're still all virtual in Palos Verdes Estates. Just on Saturday, we're going to be spending all day interviewing for committees and commissions, and I think we can appoint good people through that as we went ahead and found a good city manager virtually the entire process before we actually met her in person. So we just continue to soldier on and share a lot of what our other cities are doing out there. Thank you.
Thank you. B, did I see your hand up?
No, sorry. I just lifted my hand. Sorry.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to wave.
All right. Britt?
Yes, I would just mention that with the latest increase in the virus, that many more of our businesses and restaurants are responding to the opportunity provided by the city to move their businesses outside, move their restaurants outside, and people are responding also in terms of trying to be supportive of our local businesses. We have 30 people that have contracted the virus, which we are making every effort to maintain that low number, and our citizens are really supportive of that. You see a major turnout of people using masks, which we kind of didn't have the first time. So we're pleased with the response.
Thank you. I see no other hands.
Hildy has her hand up.
Hildy?
Thank you. I guess I have a little hand. I do appreciate this because I maybe want to ask if anybody else is having these experiences or has tried any of the approaches that we have to some of our challenges. The first one is that just this week we increased our enforcement of the face covering requirement. And with that, we also further restricted beyond the county face covering requirement. We are now requiring that the coverings be worn at all times when you leave your house. And that comes with a lot of support. What we have seen is that it comes with far greater compliance because we also instituted an enforcement process this weekend, and we will continue to do that. And so I would love to hear from if anybody else in this group is considering those measures to kind of further restrict the compliance of the face covering mandates to get greater compliance. So our numbers went up by 140% in a month period, and that was a great concern to everybody certainly in our area. So we're looking at ways to start addressing that, and that's our first step this week. Like many of you have also mentioned, helping our businesses get outdoors, since indoors is a challenge and is being restricted farther. So in addition to the restaurants, which we have mostly in our downtown area, but throughout Manhattan Beach, been assisting in the permitting for outdoor dining, both in parking areas, on the sidewalks, and in parking lots, and in private areas, and outdoor malls, and in those kinds of ways, trying to help our restaurants. But also, we are getting a lot of requests from our personal care businesses, like the hair care and nail salons. And so, we're trying to think of ways to help them have outdoor businesses, but also in the fitness centers and salons. So trying to find ways to allow them to use our park areas. If there's any way to use the beaches, although our beach is a county beach, so that's a challenge. But those are other ways that we're just trying to be more creative about helping our businesses get outdoors and increase their businesses. So if anybody has looked at any other creative ways of doing that, I would love to hear it, because it's a challenge, and we are trying as much as we can. with respect to getting back to City Hall, we are again in no hurry to get back to City Hall. We've done a really effective job of the remote use of our services. And other than, the summer classes through our Parks and Recs, we have effectively been able to keep most of those that work physically in City Hall remotely working out of their homes, other than obviously public safety. We do have challenges now with public safety. We've had some confirmed cases and some exposure in our public safety department. So that's a worry whenever we have to pull our law enforcement out for 2 weeks or more for their own self-quarantining. So those are our challenges. But it's great to hear others and how they're creatively addressing this. So I appreciate this conversation. Thank you, Olivia.
All right, Jennifer, I'm sorry. Christian, you had your hand up first, and then Jennifer.
I just wanted to say in relation to what Hildy was talking about with the masks, I brought it up at our council meeting Tuesday night. I wanted to have the conversation because I'm getting a lot of emails as it relates to what Manhattan Beach is doing and why aren't we doing the same thing. And I'm also getting emails to the contrary of that, Hildy, which, don't do what Manhattan Beach is doing. But I wanted to at least have that conversation. We did. The vast majority of my colleagues were not interested in going down the mandate route, but I feel like, it's up to us to set an example at some level. And I wish that example was being set at all levels of government as it relates to masks. It was interesting, anecdotally, it was pointed out that in Manhattan Beach, it seemed that there was a greater percentage of people wearing masks when out and about versus, say, in the Riviera Village, which I brought up before, where people were going to dine and were walking around, but they were not necessarily using masks. So we are bringing back a resolution to make a very strong recommendation that Redondo Beach residents wear masks when out in public at all times. It doesn't have the teeth of Manhattan Beach, but it was the best I could do.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that the county approved a spending package for the CARES Act funding. It's a little over $1.2 billion. And just briefly, the 4 major categories, it's a little over $650 million for public health measures like contact tracing and testing, $200 for direct financial support for residents, for things like rent relief, food and child care expenses. And it's an additional $160 million for business assistance in the form of grants, and then $150 million to support the county's response to the emergency, like boosting up the 211 call center and supporting disaster services workers. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to discuss this issue, this area? I see no further hands. So we'll move on to agency reports. So in this section, oral reports will only be made to clarify or amplify written attachments. So so
it's nothing to report.
We have nothing to report in this section, is that right?
Right.
Okay, then. So
I do have one upcoming event that I want to mention, came up today. I received something which I sent to your city managers today, that next week is called Push Week for the census. Our cities are 60 to 70% compliant, pretty much, very close to 2/3 of your residents are compliant. But if you could all see about using your social media, any kinds of outreach that you have, next week they're going to try to make a really big push. And as you know, this is going to affect future funding and representation in the South Bay, in Los Angeles, in California. So it is Push Week, and your cities do have that information.
Thank you.
Kenny has his hand up. Okay.
Just quickly, Jackie, when is the actual deadline for the last day of the census?
I thought they moved it to October.
Is it October 1st?
You know, I don't remember
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's really important. So
Yep.
if you can do what you can do. Okay, thank you.
So we'll move on to upcoming events and announcements. Do we have any from your cities?
Redondo Beach is celebrating the great sit-in. We're all going to stay home and get on Zoom.
Anyone else with any announcements of great events that are going on? More Zoom events or something else? George, you have a question, you have a comment.
Starting today, actually, Torrance kicked off what we call Dare to Care initiative, and we're putting banners across the city. It's really, we're encouraging all residents to do random acts of kindness in this day and age.
All right. Anyone else?
This is Stacy. We have the State of the City virtually this coming Thursday, week from today.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
Hildy's with the small hand.
With me with this line. I'll do that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. So I'm excited to say that we actually have something that we are celebrating, which is the 100-year anniversary of our pier. So we have a lovely virtual tour of our pier through our historical society. So please go on and look at the pictures dating back to from 100 years to today. And it's nice to celebrate something that's positive and something that we cherish. So I want to just share that.
Are we able to walk on the pier yet?
And you can walk on the pier.
Sure. All right.
It's been
I'd
open
rather do that.
Come down and come walk on the.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to do. Anyone else? All right. Thank you all. So if I have no further events or announcements from anyone, last chance. Well, thank you all. The next board meeting is Thursday, August 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
It's the 20th, not the 27th.
I said the 20th.
Right. Somebody else, I think, said the 27th. 27th is our regular meeting. 20th is our special meeting.
Okay, yes, 20, okay. The 27th is our regular meeting. So with that, if there are no further comments or questions, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Nice seeing everyone. Bye.
Stay well and stay healthy.
Good
Yes.
job.
Good night. And I mean, bye.
Bye.